Hello and welcome back to the Amsterdam Chess Open 2025 recap. This is round 5. I am currently on 1.5 points out of 4 games. Not a great tournament by any mean. Not the type of performance that I was looking forward to. But in this game I was playing black, and just to tell you something about this game, I played up until move 19 at 100% accuracy. So not even a slight inaccuracy up until almost the 20th move of this game. So you're in for a treat. Let's have a look. My opponent goes e4 and I play my beloved Kalashnikov Sicilian. Now, in the Kalashnikov, I mentioned in the very first round of this tournament, which unfortunately I lost, that knight to b5 is the main move. And as a matter of fact, it's pretty much the only move, because any other move, knight to f3, knight to b3, knight takes, or knight to f5, are all suboptimal for white. And you will understand why in this game. This is a very good demonstration of why. So my opponent goes back to b3. I develop my knight to f6. Now we develop some knights, and I pin this knight, meaning that I'm threatening this pawn. My opponent defends the pawn with bishop to d3, but this is already gone wrong for white because I can play d5. d5 breaks in the center, and in the Kalashnikov the main issue is that we have this backward pawn here. A backward pawn is a pawn that cannot be defended by any other pawns on the side, and after d5 I'm fundamentally just getting rid of that pawn. And the reason why I can play d5 is because this bishop is blocking the view of the queen. So I believe that the main move here is bishop to c4, if I'm not mistaken. And if the knight takes on e4, there is this move here, threatening checkmate. Is this not the idea, my friend Engine? Knight to d6. Wait, what? Oh, knight to d6 like this. Well, this looks very unpleasant, I have to say. The Engine thinks that black is better because we won a pawn, but I don't know if I would want to enter this. Instead, we simply break in the center with d5, takes and takes, and this was all preparation. So up until this very moment, every single move that I played was in my prep, so I played it nearly instantly. You can see that I still have more than the time I started with, so the game lasts 1 hour 30 minutes for each player, and I now have 1 hour and 32 minutes because I gain 30 seconds every single move I play. And my opponent goes queen to h5. Now queen to h5 sets up, first of all, a very simple threat. If I castle, this is simply checkmate in one move, supported by the bishop. And if I don't castle, and let's say I go queen here, he's still kind of poking at my king side. If I play h6 and let's say then he castles and I castles, he can actually just sacrifice here like this. And this is almost an unstoppable checkmate threat. White is completely winning. Which is why I went g6 after some thought, the first moment in the game where I thought. The opponent goes queen to h6, preventing castling, but now I simply bring my bishop back, and I'm kicking the queen back to e3, and now my bishop takes the space here on g7. So up until here, still a perfect game of chess. My opponent castles, and so do I, and he plays rook a to b1. Now, rook a to b1 is trying to use this open file and get away from the diagonal of this dark square bishop. But this allows me to play b6. And b6, first of all, kind of makes this rook bite on granite, because if the knight ever moves, now this rook is not attacking b7, and b6 is also stopping this knight from entering the game in any way. The only route somehow to the center for this knight is to go back here, here, and here. So that's never going to happen. And some of you might notice, well, b6 seems very weakening, which is why it still took me about 5 minutes to gather the courage to play it. Because after bishop here, the knight is under attack, and behind the knight there is the rook. But I had calculated queen to c7, queen to f3, adding more pressure, and now, very importantly, not bishop to b7, but bishop to d7. Because this bishop wants to keep the flexibility of going to the king side. And by the way, if we go to b7, this bishop is now pinned. So for example, let's say, I don't know, a random move by white, we cannot move this knight without losing the bishop, right? So that's an extra thing that we need to take care of. So bishop to b7, a move I was very happy with. And there are two more moves of perfection before some more human chess going on. Now my opponent goes to c4. Rook a to c8 is trying to add some pressure on this file and remove the rook from the pin. My opponent goes rook f to d1. And now this is the first, well, not even imprecise move, I suppose, in the game, but just not the best move. Up until now, every single move I played was either a book move, so a theory move, or the very best move in the position. Now, what is the best move in the position? It is bishop to e6. Now we don't need to defend this knight anymore with the bishop, the queen and rook are enough to defend it, and bishop to e6 is simply placing the bishop on a better diagonal. And the reason why I didn't play this is because I thought that the opponent had bishop to d5, and now of course if I take this, the opponent gains a passed pawn, removes the doubled pawns, which are not nice for white, and after something like knight to d4 and takes, it's going to be somewhat hard to target this pawn. Now, the engine says that black is still slightly better, 0.6 as a matter of fact, because it's not easy to defend this pawn. For example, if white ever pushes here, we're simply going to take en passant, and now this is a target long term. And so that was the way to go. Instead, I play king to h8 with the very clear intention to play f5. And f5 is a very typical move in the Kalashnikov. We are trying to use this pawn chain and basically attack on the king side. Now, this is not the best plan because again, like the weaknesses are on the queen side. So I shouldn't have focused on the king side. And furthermore, if I want to go f5, I should do that right away, because after bishop to d5, I can play king to h8 anyway and nothing changes. I guess it doesn't really matter. So after king to h8, bishop here, I play f5. My opponent goes to this diagonal for the bishop, very good move. And I play knight to e7 after 11 minutes of thoughts. Now, I was very worried here about bishop to b4. Bishop to b4 attacks the knight, attacks the rook behind the knight, and it's not easy to defend it. So for example, if I go here, now there is bishop here attacking the rook, and apparently after e4 I'm fine because of queen h3 and rook f8, and if takes, this is what the engine is saying. Okay, I didn't like that. Another good move here after bishop to b4 is to go with the other rook here, and basically after some move by white, let's say, I don't know, let's say rook here, I can play rook to f6, removing myself from the pin, which looks a little bit ridiculous, but from a practical standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. Instead, my opponent didn't see that at all, so he went here, and his idea is that now if I take this bishop, he's going to take back with the rook and have a lot of pressure on this pawn. And if I play something like bishop here trying to attack the rook, he actually wins, or at least gains some advantage, because if I go here, I cannot take the rook. There is going to be a fork on the king and queen, and I lose the game. Now the engine here says queen to c4 and you're fine. I didn't consider this. This makes a lot of sense. Now the rook is simply pinned with no point. This is very nice. Actually, what does white do here? Take the bishop, and now bishop takes. Wow, okay, yeah, this would have been quite nice. Okay, instead I push f4, which is not a great move. It's not a great move. I'm trying to misplace my opponent's pieces. By far... Oh, wait, what? The engine likes f4, actually, I'm seeing now. Oh, no, okay. Now it went back to knight takes d5. Knight takes d5, best move. f4 is the third best move. Slightly less optimal, because now this pawn chain is not as stable as it used to be. But the good thing about f4 is that I can play f3. Not here, sorry, I take the knight first. So knight takes, rook takes, and I think now f3. Is now f3 an idea? I'm attacking the rook, and if this, I've created a lot of weaknesses, I can follow up with rook here and basically double up my rooks. And although this is only 0.7, I would argue that black is completely winning from a human standpoint. And also, I have the option to go bishop f5 and pressure this pawn like this. Now, instead, I decide to take this pawn, because I thought that after the queen takes and the rook takes, if the bishop takes here, I'm simply going to take, and this is a better endgame for black, because I can go here, target this pawn, and if white tries to come here and attack my pawn, I can just play something like a5, get out of the attack. If he keeps harassing my pawns, I can actually, I see here now, play a4, move. I mean, all kinds of stuff. This is simply a better endgame for black. What I missed, though, is that my opponent can take the light square bishop. And now this is a very subtle and important difference, because the dark square bishop is not the bishop that I want in this endgame. All of these pieces are on light squares. I want the light square bishop to be able to attack these weaknesses. And now after I take the pawn and my opponent goes here, this is given as a miss by the engine, but I thought it was by far the best move in the game. The engine wants rook takes a7. After this move here, now I have a chance again to get an advantage with bishop to c3. But bishop to c3 is a very scary move to play, because this allows the rooks in. And this looks terrifying. But the engine says, oh, you just take the pawn here, allow them to take here with check, and after rook to h6, you can just defend this pawn actually, like this, and you're completely fine. And as a matter of fact, the back rank for white is very weak. But I mean, after something like this, creating space, I don't really see what we have. The engine says rook e6, and apparently this endgame, despite the rooks being so close to the black king, this endgame is completely winning for black, which is kind of crazy. I didn't gather the courage to allow the rook in. I was calculating bishop to c3, but instead I went bishop to f6, trying to defend the infiltration of the rook. But now this is simply a drawn endgame. As a matter of fact, I was slightly worried that white was better. But after h3, I found this very nice move, bishop to h4. I'm attacking the pawn here. If my opponent goes here, I actually win on the spot after f takes, bishop takes, and pawn takes and bishop takes. And if the opponent plays, for example, what can the opponent play? Well, if he tries to come here, for example, I have bishop to h2 check, and this is going to be checkmate. So instead, my opponent goes rook f1. I went here, stopping the knight from coming in. My opponent comes up. Now the engine wants g5, trapping our own bishop. I did not play that. Instead, I came back and I offered a draw, which my opponent accepted. So again, like round 4, this was a shame, because a game that I played damn close to perfection, like up until move 19, this was 100% accuracy in this game. And still, the rest of the game, I played very, very, very precise. As a matter of fact, the total accuracy for both me and my opponent throughout the, how many moves? 32 moves of this game is 95. So both of us did 95% accuracy in this game. And eventually it fizzled out to a draw. I'm still happy because it was a great game. I feel like I played a high level game of chess. Missed some chances, misevaluated some positions, and that's why it didn't end in a win, but that's just how it goes sometimes. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching this, thank you very much for supporting me. After this round, I was on 2 points out of 5 games going into the last round of the tournament. Watch the last recap to find out how I ended the tournament. Leave a like, let me know your thoughts on this game, subscribe, and I will see you next time.